when you're scanning, one thing you can do is to grab a banner. You see, services, at least polite services, they identify themselves and a little bit of information about themselves when a client tries to make a connection. But that gives away their version and other stuff that you might be able to use to map to an exploit. So banner grabbing is, I'm not really interested in connecting to you, but I will start a conversation to grab your banner so that I can use that to try to figure out what is your version number so I can look for an exploit. That's banner grabbing. So services identify themselves when they are queried, and their messages can reveal information about the service or the operating system, even if it's normal hello messages or even error messages. It's also possible to use TCP and ICMP messages to identify an operating system. So banner grabbing, or OS fingerprinting, is a way to determine the OS running on the target. If we know the OS, we can find vulnerabilities and exploits, which will be worth attacking or attacking with. So you can either actively banner grab or passively banner grab. Now, active banner grabbing, we send a packet to a service on an OS and we capture the response. And the response is compared to a list in a database to say, oh, that is Windows Server 2016. And of course, responses from different OSs will vary because of differences in the TCP/IP stack or differences in the service version. Passive banner grabbing is simply just sniffing. And we're just looking at error messages provided, that provide information by the type of server, the type of OS, or any SSL tools used by that target. So we just sniff to see what goes past us. So we can just find out about the OS that way. Maybe we can find out about pages in a URL to help us determine versions of, say, the website. So, active banner grabbing. I send specially crafted packets to some operating system. I note the response. I compare this to a known database to determine the OS, and I realize that different OSs are going to have different variations and different responses. Passive, I'm just grabbing from error messages and sniffing and any page extensions that happen to go past me. Like, for example, .aspx, that tells me it's an IIS server. So banner grabbing is actually a way of enumerating, but we can use it as part of our scanning. We try to identify an operating system or a service, and we get that service to identify itself. There are a number of tools that can grab banners from the services. And we can grab banners from FTP, SSH, HTTP, SMTP, POP3, IMAP, 4, DNS, Telnet, Microsoft DS, Microsoft NetBIOS, etc. Samba. So that helps us focus what our attack will be. Here are some sample commands for banner grabbing. And this is just using command line tools without necessarily using like a GUI tool or anything. We could just simply say telnet, the address and the port, like telnet 192.168.1.1.25, and see how it responds. Or we could use netcat, which is the Swiss Army knife of hacking. Netcat tac very verbose, VV, target IP and the port. Or we could say, if we wanted to get information about a particular web page, echo. Now this is on Linux. Echo tac en, and in quotes, get HTTP 1.0 /n/n/n/n. That means just like carriage returns. Pipe that to netcat against this host, against this port, and then pipe that output grep server, and it'll show us banner information of HTTP. That's a little fancy there. We can nmap tac scap-v target IP, tac-p port number. I love SV. Or nmap tac scap-v tac script equals banner target. So these are just a few ways without using a special tool. Now there are 4 areas that typically identify an operating system: the time to live, the window size, if there is a don't fragment bit set, but it's only for SCO and OpenBSD, or the type of service, although that's more determined by the protocol than the OS. So here's just a little comparison table. Like the old Linux 2.4 and 2.6, and Google Linux and FreeBSD and OpenBSD all have a time to live in their IP packets of 64. Windows 95 was only 32. Windows 2000 XP and above are 128. You can see the receive window buffer size as well and how different it is for the various ones. We can also see here that, so here's 98 Vista, 2008 plus 2016. And see again with Microsoft we're at 128 with an 8192 byte TCP window size. Cisco, the Cisco iOS, don't think iOS is iPhone. We mean Cisco routers and switches. Version 12.4 has a time to live of 255 with a window size of this. Solaris, which is a whole other operating system, has these things. And AIX has these things. So you can compare, and actually you don't have to, but your tool can look at those responses and go, that's a such and such. There are other banner grabbing tools like IDserve, really easy to use. It will identify the make, model, and version of any website server software. It can also identify non-web type things like FTP, SMTP, POP in the news. Netcraft also will report the site's operating system, web server, and the who's the owner of the block of IP addresses with a graphical view. Netcat is a utility that reads and writes data across network connections using TCP/IP, basically sets up a backdoor listener and you can connect to it. And Telnet is an easy way also of scanning different headers to get responses. So here's a picture of using IDserve. So you put in the destination and you hit query the server and then it brings back all this information. What's the countermeasure? Well, turn off banners if you can. Configure the service to not use them, or put in phony banners, or just turn off unnecessary services. There are also tools that will disable or change the banner. If you are using an Apache web server in Linux, there's a configuration file, httpd.conf, that specifies the banner. You can edit that. You could also use various tools to not show the extensions. Like if I see ASP or ASPX, I know that's Windows. Or if I see HTML, then I know that's going to be Windows, Linux. I know that each one is something different. So there are tools that will hide those extensions. We'll see banner grabbing when we look at the lab.